Hello and welcome to this new video. We're going to go through a few tips about modelling, and especially for beginners and starting out. Not all of them are technical or practical. Some of them are just, well, they just are. So first of all then, when you're starting out in modelling, keep it simple. Simple shapes, simple objects, something you can see what the kind of thing is made up from. If you're modelling a can, then that's perfect. It's a cylinder with a few tweaks. If you're modelling a crate, then that's perfect. It's a cube with some tweaks. Get good at it, because it will teach you the basic modelling tools, and when you've got that down pat, go on to more complicated shapes. We can use a slightly more advanced can, or a watering can, or almost anything, but start simple. It helps you to build confidence with the tools, and it prevents you from getting frustrated. It might not be something you want to show your mates, and show off, but it's the fundamentals, it's the start. Okay, so tip number 2 is model with quads. When you're starting out, modelling with quads is quite important. Some people will tell you that it's old and out-fashioned and it's not needed anymore, everything's fine, do what you want. And other people tell you it's the most vital thing in the world. The truth is that it teaches you the basics. If you know how to quad model, then you know when it's appropriate to quad model and when it's appropriate to go for it and have some end-ons and all sorts of strange things. As a somebody who hires people to make models for me on occasion, nothing tells me more that somebody knows what they're doing and knows what they're talking about if I can see the quad modelling, because it shows that they've learned, it shows that they understand and they know when it's appropriate to do it and when it's appropriate not to. So model with quads wherever you possibly can. Okay, so UV mapping then is my third tip. UV mapping is easy to ignore and overlook as a modeler, because it's difficult. It puts constraints on the way you model, and it's fiddly and it's time consuming, but I absolutely promise you it's really important, if not a vital skill, to understand UV mapping. You can get around it, you can do shortcuts, there are fast ways, there are intermediate ways, but there's nothing quite like being able to properly unwrap a model. And if you're passing it on to a texture artist, they will thank you. They will absolutely thank you for a nicely unwrapped model, because it makes their job easier. If you send them something that's not appropriate, then they're going to have to do it themselves or send it back to you, and that just wastes everybody's time. So UV mapping, don't overlook it. Learn it. I know it's dull, but once you've learnt it, once you understand unwrapping, you will know when it's appropriate to do the full unwrapping process and when it's appropriate to make shortcuts. I'll just give you a little demonstration here. This took me quite a while, oddly enough, finding my seams and doing things, but this is like the wooden structure of my house that I did a texturing tutorial on. And if I just select everything, you'll see everything's nicely aligned and nicely in order. Everything's going in the same direction. If somebody sent me this map, I'd be happy. But there are other ways of doing it. So if I select everything and hit U and do a smart UV project and click OK, that's what I'd get. And I have so many sort of islands. I've upped the space to kind of emphasize it really. Nothing's connected. I've got so many seams all over the place. there is going to be an issue somewhere. Something is going to go wrong in the texturing process. So UV mapping, don't overlook it. It's well worth investing some time in. Tip number 4 then. So next tip is model to scale. Nothing breaks the kind of reality barrier, the uncanny valley, like something that's out of scale. You know, imagine you've modelled the perfect luggage thing, and you know you've sent it off to your client or your one of your other team members, and they import it, and it's twice the size of a human being. You know, the proportion is correct, but the scale is wrong. So, you know, have a look for references, pick up things. You know, one of the things that I do most commonly is model, like if I'm modelling a table and chairs or a sofa or an armchair or something, I will go and I will find out. You'd think I'd save them, but I don't. How tall is a table? You know, how wide is a typical table? You know, if I'm doing a 4-seater or a 6-seater, what are the proportions? And then I model to that scale. Not the proportion, but the actual scale, whether it be inches or meters or centimeters or miles or, you know, whatever. Do it at the right scale. Because if everybody does it at the right scale, when all the models come together, everything is perfect. You know, imagine a scene as if it were a face, you know, somebody's face, and you've done the eyes and somebody else has done the nose and somebody else has done the lips, and you know, you're all working at different scales, and then you put everything together and it doesn't look right because everything's the wrong size. That's exactly the same if you're doing like an interior, even an exterior. You know, if one item is off, something will break the magic, and you know, your eye will pick it up, and you might, you know, it might not be readily obvious, but something will be there. So model to scale, pick your scale, stick with it, and advise everybody else to do the same thing. So next tip. Okay, so this one, tip 5. This one is very, very much my opinion, and is probably quite subjective, and lots of people disagree with me, which is fine. But in my opinion, modelling and UV mapping are the absolute base of the pyramid and the foundation of the whole 3D process. You know, if the modelling's done right and the UV mapping's done right, then the texture artist has an easy time. You know, when it gets onto the animation stage, if it is going to be animated, the animator will have a much easier time if the modelling and the UV mapping's done right in the first place, because UV mapping is used for more than simply texturing. It's used for other things like selection and effects and so on and so forth. And ultimately you get to the production end and you know everything is fine. Now with a modelling mistake or a UV mapping mistake, it might not be picked up until it gets to any one of those stages. It might be quite minor, it might not be an issue for the texturer or the animator, but it might be an issue for production. And if you get all the way through that chain and there's an issue, then all that time spent by multiple people and multiple teams has to be done again, you know, to some extent or another. So really concentrate on it. It will give you the basis for you know, the following processes. You know, if you're a texture artist, for example, and you have a good understanding of modelling and a good understanding of UV mapping, you know, you can feed back, or you can fix. You know, you can fix minor issues and get on with it, or you can give an intelligent kind of coherent feedback to the modeler to say, you know, this is wrong, can you please resolve it. Similarly, at the animation stage, if you understand polygon flow and you know, so on and so forth, you can feed back, and you can also fix if you need to. So it's the basis, and if everybody has a good understanding of those things, then I think it makes the whole kind of process and the whole chain, the whole production line, if you like, much smoother. So that's that. And I know I said this is 5 tips. I've got some honourable mentions that I can't really ignore, so stick around for those in the next section. Okay, so some honourable mentions. So my first honourable mention is get good at selecting. It makes life so much easier when you can select easily around loops and regions and different areas. It makes life much quicker and is less frustrating, especially when you're UV mapping. Okay, so modelling wise, bevel, extrude, weld and cut. They're the 4 tools that you can do so many things with. So, get good with them, practice with them, and, you'll be well on the way. So, it's not so much of a tip as a bit of a, I don't know, really, something. 3D modelling is a technical skill, but it's also an art form. And as in all art forms, the best artists are the ones that practice. Practice and practice and practice. They are, some of the most talented and technical people in the world, at their skill. And, practicing is, everything. It's boring. I mean, imagine, in sports that you see kickers, for example, in, rugby in my country and, other areas, other places, American football, you'll see a kicker practicing over and over again. They kick that ball and kick it 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 until it's so ingrained in their mind they don't even have to think about it. So practice. Okay, so I think that's it really, and I hope you found it useful and informative. I hope, fingers crossed. And I'll talk to you in another video set.